Welcome again. We begin with the U.S. Ambassador to Russia, John Sullivan, who has arrived at the Foreign Ministry today, along with Polish Ambassador Krzysztof Kraszewski. According to reports, the Polish ambassador has been summoned to the Foreign Ministry after protesters poured red liquid over Russia's envoy to Poland at a wreath-laying ceremony in Warsaw on Monday. We'll have more on this as soon as we get the details. In the meantime, Russia's foreign minister says the country has enough buyers for its oil and gas outside of Western countries as EU countries try to reduce their reliance on Russian energy.
Sergei Lavrov said, let the West pay more than it used to pay to the Russian Federation and let it explain to its population why they should become poorer. Mr. Lavrov was speaking at a news conference after talks with his counterpart in Muscat, Oman. This is as the governor of Kharkiv region said attacks are intensifying, particularly in residential areas, and the United Nations has reported that the civilian death toll in Ukraine is thousands higher than the official UN figure of 3,381.
Well, Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov says that Russia remains committed to its gas supply deals after he was asked to comment on the dispute with Ukraine over the major gas transit to Europe. During a daily conference, Mr. Peskov told reporters Russia has always met and intends to meet all its contractual obligations. He said, well, we earlier reported the Ukraine's gas pipeline operator had invoked a clause when a business is hit by something beyond its control. It said it was impossible to further transport gas through the crossing point and the border compressor station in Novopskyov, which are located in the occupied territories. Russian gas flows to Europe via Ukraine fell by a quarter on Wednesday after Kyiv halted the use of a major transit route, blaming interference in Russian forces. The first time exports via Ukraine have been disrupted since Russia's military operation in the country began in February.
Our viewers, Anna Chernikova joins us now from Kyiv in Ukraine. Anna, thanks for joining us. We understand that Ukraine says it will redirect the flow of natural gas to avoid the key eastern transit point from Russia to Europe. Explain that situation and the impact on Ukraine and countries meant to be receiving gas.
Hello. Yes, well, the situation is quite complicated, to be honest, because basically 8% of Russian gas transferred to Europe is exactly this transit point, which is Sokhanivka. It locates in Luhansk region, and for the moment, it is under Russian occupation. So this is the first time since the war began that there is a problem with gas supply. I mean, the gas transit through Ukraine, because it did continue without any problems and without any interruptions since February 24th. So what Ukrainian side is claiming that they cannot ensure safety and they cannot ensure the operation of this transit point because it's not under Ukrainian control. So they suggested that the transit is moved to Sudzha. It's another transit point which was already previously used when Russian side needed to do certain technical works on the Sokhanivka transit point. So basically, this one could be easily used to continue the transit to Europe. However, Gazprom, which is the monopoly for Russian gas exports, refused to move the transit to this other point, claiming that they don't have any technical possibility, which is, well, not kind of true. So basically, what we can see for the moment that Ukraine, if Ukraine stops the transit, and what we know so far that on Tuesday, the transit was 92.8 million cubic meters, while on Wednesday, it's 72 million. So it's dropping quite rapidly. And in order to fulfill all the obligations, the only way is to move the transit to another point. So basically, the countries which are going to suffer, it's Austria, Italy, Slovakia, and other East European countries, because this is exactly where the gas is going. For Ukraine, well, Ukraine was previously saying that European countries have to think over an alternative to Russian gas, in particular because, well, the problem would appear and the problem would be a long term. So this is the situation for now, and we'll see how it's gonna end. But again, this is just a certain confirmation of what Mr. Zelensky, the president of Ukraine, said previously, that Europe should think very specifically over the further Russian gas transit.
In the sixth package, and this is regardless of what Kremlin is saying today, that Russia remains committed to the gas supply deals. But let's go over to what's happening in the Kharkiv region. The governor there said that attacks are intensifying, particularly in residential areas with the Russia-controlled eastern town of Izium. What more do we know?
Kharkiv region for the moment remains a very crucial point and very important area. What we know that Ukrainian forces had quite a lot of success in this region, and they moved successfully forward. They removed Ukrainian forces almost to the Russian border and recaptured a lot of territories and a lot of villages and a lot of areas in that region. However, Izium, which is quite a big city in Kharkiv region, remains under Russian control, and the most heavy fightings are happening there at this point of time. What we know from today's briefing, that starting from today's morning and up to the afternoon, very intense fightings were happening, and Ukrainian forces made certain success in that region, so to the direction of Izium. Ukrainians also destroyed a lot of Russian equipment, including one helicopter and quite a lot of heavy weapons. So what we also know regarding Kharkiv attack, that this is true. Russian forces are trying to scare civilians and trying to attack civilian areas. Probably this is certain, there's certain response to Ukrainian successful movements in this area.
Anna, the Russian forces have also been shelling the border regions of Sumy and Chernihiv, and of course have continued their attacks on the Azovstal steel plant, and those soldiers who are in there with the Ukrainian resistance forces are still holding up. How much longer can they wait, and what is the plan here by the government to help the soldiers who are still stuck in the Azovstal steel plant?
Let's start with Sumy and Chernihiv. These are areas in the north part of the country which were under occupation and were main points in Russian Russian route towards Kiev. So these areas are now free, but again, we experience intensifying of missile attacks. And again, this could be kind of terroristic actions by Russian forces, because a lot of civilians started to come back to these regions because previously it was not possible due to mining, and now government is allowing people to come back. So this is probably certain certain scaring of the civilians, but again, unfortunately, there are a lot of new damages in this region. For the moment, there are no reports of any casualties within the civil society. Moving to Mariupol, Azovstal, well, probably the only word that I can use to describe what's happening there is hell. And this is exactly what Azovstal soldiers are saying, that, situation is terrible, very difficult. Just a couple of minutes ago, we received information on another massive attack, bombarding and missile attack on Azovstal plant. The attack is happening from the land, from the sea, and from the air, everything at the same time. Soldiers remain there. They report that there are still more than 100 of civilians in that, together with them in the shelter. So there are the plant is not free of civilians completely. However, today in the morning, a so-called leader of Donetsk People's Republic said that, taking into consideration that there are no civilians there anymore, we can do whatever we want now. And after that words, the Russian forces started another severe attack. Soldiers are keeping keep the protection service, and they continue to do their job. What they say that there are two possibilities of how this could be resolved. So, and they said that they do see the military possibility to retake Azovstal, and so Ukrainian soldiers can try to do. We don't know, of course, the details, and we don't know if Ukrainian government would take this decision. Another way to rescue soldiers and to resolve this is to proceed with extraction procedure, which could be done by the third country. And this is another point that Ukrainian government is also considering and is negotiating with its European and international partners. So for the moment, we don't know how exactly this situation could be resolved. But of course, for Ukrainian government, this is the main priority, to rescue soldiers and to rescue civilians that remain in the Azovstal plant. And I would like to remind you that in Mariupol itself, in the city, there are still more than 120,000 civilians, and they also need to be evacuated and rescued.
Indeed, indeed, Anna. And the situation in Kherson, Russian forces reportedly have taken over the city and are putting, their own people in many of the empty homes. We also understand authorities will be asking the president, that's the Russian president, to make the region a part of Russia. Is that true?
This is what we heard from, again, so-called military management, as they call themselves, of Kherson. They announced today that they are not going to create a so-called Kherson People's Republic. This is what they claimed before, that they would like to do something similar to what has been done in Donetsk and Luhansk. So yeah, today they announced that they would ask Russian government to include Kherson to Russian to the Russian territory. Ukrainian officials' official reply was that, of course, they can claim whatever they want and they can join whatever country or planet they want, but there's definitely not going to be recognized, and it's not going to be, there's not going to be the case for them, because Ukrainian forces would take Kherson over. This is exactly what Ukrainian officials said. So what we know that Russian government, and in particular Mr. Peskov, the spokesperson of the president of Russia, said that if Kherson wants to do this, they would have to go through the procedure that Crimea did. So basically, what we can see from all this and all these things that we've heard, that probably they would try to repeat Crimea scenario in Kherson. But again, Ukrainian side is pretty sure that they're not going to be successful in that, because Kherson would be recaptured back.
Anna Chernikova, thanks for your reporting, and do continue to stay safe.
Thank you.
We can bring you more on the situation in Ukraine as it enters the third month of fighting there by Russian forces against the resistance of the Ukrainian forces.
Some 14,000 Ukrainians are thought to be currently in Georgia, but many of them from southeast Ukraine and the city of Mariupol, a once bustling industrial port with a pre-war population of 400,000. Mariupol has experienced heavy bombardments since the early days of the conflict, with civilians suffering shortages of drinking water and food. The Kremlin and Russia's Emergency Situations Ministry has said it's offering humanitarian aid to those wanting to leave Mariupol. Russian authorities offered them emergency accommodation, food, temporary immigration documents, a 10,000 ruble grant, and onward travel to a new home in Russia, further away from the border, according to Russian officials and accounts from refugees. Meanwhile, at the Azovstal steel plant in Mariupol, and after evacuation of civilians, fierce fighting and bombings resumed. In an exclusive video by reporter Dmitry Maslak, who entered the steel plant from the northwest side, it shows continued explosions at the site. Judging from the map of the Azovstal steel plant, Maslak said the shelling mainly targeted several workshops in the plant, with airstrikes focusing on areas near the two chimneys. And to a hospital in the small Ukrainian town of Bakhmut. It was never intended to receive queues of ambulances bringing the wounded and traumatized from the front line of Europe's biggest battlefield. Nor did the volunteer paramedics expect 4 months ago to be shuttling back and forth to the front line of a brutal tank battle with an earshot of rockets and shelling.
I haven't seen so much human tragedy before, and these are like absolutely unnecessary sufferings. I understand there's a war and everybody says, well, you know, there will be casualties, but okay, which is appalling in a way, but when, like, you know, Russian sniper just kills a mother of the family who are going to cross the bridge, like to Irpin, well, there's no justification to that.
The hospital's main job now is to stabilize the injured from the battle zone around the towns of Popasna and the Luhansk region so they can be moved on to bigger hospitals in western Ukraine, farther from the main battle. Ukraine state gas grid operator Getsu has said that it will stop the transit of Russian gas via the Sokhranovka route starting Wednesday due to force majeure affecting the delivery of a third of the fuel from Russia to Europe through Ukraine. Getsu said in a statement that it's not able to operate the compressor station at the Novopskov, which is located in northern Luhansk, as Ukraine has lost control of the area.
Finland's Prime Minister Sanna Marin has said that if her nation takes the historic step to apply to join the NATO alliance, it will be for the security of its own citizens, and that the move would strengthen the whole global community.
That's right. Marin, who is on a 3-day visit to Tokyo, also mentioned Russia's actions in Ukraine openly violating international law and the Charter of the United Nations. She spoke just a day after meeting the Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida, and also a day before the Finnish President Sauli Niinisto is expected to say whether his country, which shares a long border with Russia, will apply to join the NATO alliance. Russia's invasion of Ukraine has pushed Finland and neighboring Sweden to the verge of applying for NATO membership, abandoning a belief held for decades that peace was best kept by not publicly choosing sides, but countries are close NATO partners, having taken part in the allied exercises for years.
Members of the With Prime Minister Kishida, we discussed Russia's horrible aggression against Ukraine and its consequences. Russia violates openly international law and the Charter of the United Nations. The atrocities against civilians continues. This cannot be accepted from any nation, and even less from a permanent member of the Security Council. I told Prime Minister Kishida about our plans to possibly apply for NATO membership. If Finland makes this historical step, it is for the security of our own citizens. Joining NATO would strengthen the whole international community that stands for our common values. With Prime Minister Kishida, we discussed the general disappointment towards the United Nations Security Council. The power of veto has been abused. We must reform the Council to become transparent, more effective and more representative.